Hello, you are watching Your Daily Fix with Atieno Nyar Kasagam. Today's video cast is a one-up of Americanah. I am trying to extend the conversation that Chimamanda Adichie started in her book, Americanah, a very famous book that looked at the story of an experience of an African woman in the American diaspora and what it meant to move between different notions of blackness in America and all the politics and socio-economic experiences and challenges that come about with living in America when you are from the continent. Now, I'm going to be very honest that I did not read her whole book. The reason is I was reading a preview of the book on my tablet that was available to like the first 40 or 50 pages, and that's all I could read. And I haven't had the chance to read a real book of hers, but you're welcome to share your book if you have one. And even though I'm not quite the reader anymore, I prefer to watch visual work and videos or to listen in the form of audiocast or radio. I might squeeze that in. So I don't have the full scope of her story, but from what I gathered, it's just me from what I saw from the beginning, the first couple of pages. It seems to me that she still seemed, from the story, that part I got is that she was dating this African, the main character, not Chimamanda, was dating this African American brother at some point, and she ditched him for her old time African brother in Nigeria who was already married. And she was in this place where the relationship with this African American dude wasn't jumping like her old lover from back then, and she broke up with him and so on and so forth. So I got the gist that she didn't quite, she didn't describe him with much fervor, and it didn't seem that the two of them had a very, very powerful love and intellectual and spiritual connection that and so my sense of it was that both the character and possibly Chimamanda's experience was more based in like now her experience in the US. This is my analysis, as seems to have been more involved with the Africans here, the Africans from the continent that are living in the US, and her experience with the African Americans was more peripheral, and she didn't get an opportunity for real immersion. And so that's a tangent I want to take it in because, and although I am just, I've only lived in the United States now for 4 years, and for much of that time, my experience has been very, very connected with the African American one, either politically or socially. Socially, mostly through my acquaintance with my partner in justice, Lorenzo, and the friends that I made as I got to know him and as we were dating and as we worked together, trying to connect the African American student population with the Africans from the continent while we were on campus at Michigan State University. So I wanted to segue really for today's piece into Detroit, to jump from college into Detroit, because as I've said in some of my previous videos, I did not foresee this kind of a trajectory where I would stay in America and find myself a niche in a community and be doing the kind of work we're doing, which is urban farming in Detroit. And I did not even think I'll be farming. I did not come to the US to farm. I came to do my business and to be out. And I did come with an open mind. I didn't have too many expectations, besides the fact that I did imagine that all of America looked like New York. And I remember that all through the time I was preparing for my journey to the US and to the airport and the flights, my theme song was Concrete. Is it Concrete Jungle? That song by Alicia Keys and Jay-Z, or, New York, concrete jungle where dreams are made of. Yeah, in New York. That song really gave me all the psych, all the fire. I was so excited about New York. I was so excited. When I first came into the US, I did stay on the East Coast for about 2, maybe 3 weeks in Baltimore. Was it Baltimore? It was in Maryland. And I stayed there with some friends of our family who had been in the US for a while before we had come. That's my sister friend, the Rispa, Cyril, his mom and dad, they were Wambos, who were from Kenya as well, and had known my family for a long time. My sister Rispa's mom and my mom were in high school together a long time ago in the village somewhere in Nyanza. So that was that. And the East Coast best, DC, New York, Boston, those cities have everything over East Lansing or Lansing. So basically, I felt like I was in the Bundos going to college at Michigan State. And now the transition for me from East Lansing to Detroit was also unexpected. East Lansing and Detroit are about almost an hour and 45 minutes apart, if I can remember correctly. And you see, East Lansing is predominantly white, and of course international, meaning Chinese. So the black students are a minority in general, and many, and Detroit is predominantly black too. And Detroit truly does have a bad rapport nowadays over the past couple of decades, with the collapse of the automotive industry, the hike in unemployment, the race struggles between the African American residents and the white police force and other white residents, and has a higher rate of drug related violence, gang bangers basically. So when I first heard of Detroit, it was from the people who were my first set of friends when I was in college. And who were those? They were white Americans. Because in my experience, besides my African family, because at the time when you come into college and you're interested in Africa in any way, the first people who really you can identify with and take you under their wings, they tend to be the Africans, some Africans anyways, and usually like the Africans who are affiliated with the African Students Union. So I had that crew of friends, but in terms of this other student body, it was the white Americans who were most available, interested, willing to take me in, befriend me, and they were the ones who were interested in, oh, where are you from? You're from Africa, how's that? Oh, welcome to America. Do you eat this? You know, and I did have a couple of good friends, but yeah, I lost all of those friends when I hooked up with Lorenzo for a reason I did not even know. So like I lost all my white friends when I hooked up with this black brother. But anyway, we shall discuss how that happened later, because I don't even know how that happened. So what I was trying to say is that my initial impressions of Detroit were constructed by what the white Americans would tell me about Detroit. And they were so afraid, and they would talk about like they cannot even get out of their cars in downtown Detroit. You know, you just drive. Detroit is a place you drive past. You don't even drive through. And it was insane looking back and here just thinking about the kinds of narratives that were said about Detroit. And I'm not saying that Detroit doesn't have um, some serious problems here and there, but I think that the way in which it was painted as if everything was just chaotic and violent, and that, you know, it's as if it's a civil war, drug war really going on in the city continuously and everywhere. So when I did meet Lorenzo, and I met Lorenzo in the most random ways. I met him in the spring semester of my freshman year. That is like in January, when I joined the college in August. And January of the next year. And Lorenzo was in his senior year of college. He was just about to graduate when I met him. And when I met him at an event hosted by the African Students Union. And it was a discussion between Africans from the continent and African Americans on the topic of, you know, why there's this rift between the two groups and why we don't really convene collectively, even though we do share this common African identity. And when I was invited to sit on the panel actually on that day, representing an African voice, because I had once shared with the then President Valentine that, you know, I found it extremely difficult to interact with African Americans. And I found that even when I did deliberately like join an African American table in the cafeteria, I find that there was a deliberate measure to exclude me, or, you know, there was no effort to include me in the circle. And the white folks on, you know, in contrast, would be so welcoming and, you know, inviting, and I would immediately click with them. And I found that this was something that was similar among my friends. In fact, some of my friends, my freshman year friends, my girls like Wendy, Audrey, you know, recently some more Africans that came, they even have worse opinions of African Americans, and especially African American girls, because they say that they would get a lot of attitude from them, you know, about how they looked as African sisters, maybe being fuller bodied, or how they wore their hair, or how they didn't do something, or how they did something. So many of my personal girlfriends from Africa did not like African Americans at all. So there was truly this beef. So when I spoke at that panel, basically what I was saying is that when I had come to the US, I thought that as a continental African, I would bond so easily and immediately with African Americans. And as somebody who had left a school that was Pan-African, and that was the African Leadership Academy in South Africa, I desired so much to reconnect with African Americans, especially because for me, when we had studied the slave trade, I took it very personal, and I looked at that opportunity as an opportunity to reconnect. And, you know, it was a very personal and very deep. I was looking for something so much more. And on that panel, I happened to have said that, when I came to America, I was looking for love among the African American community, but I found that there was no love for me. And I did speak with so much depth of feeling. I remember, you know, I did leave quite an impression on the room. And in fact, on Lorenzo, who was there, and I didn't know him, of course. I didn't know who were there besides the few Africans that I did know. And after that meeting, he came up to me and he gave me his contact information. Or he took mine, I can't even remember, i.e. Facebook information. And he was not the only one, so I did not take it. It wasn't a personal, it was nothing significant that we exchanged contacts. But when we did, he said, oh, let's talk about this some more. And a week later, this was now in early February, like on February or January, I can't even remember, somewhere there in between the end of January and early February. So we decided, he Facebook messaged me and he told me, oh, yeah, I was serious about saying we should meet up and discuss. So can we, meet up sometime? And I said, oh, okay. Maybe we can meet up for tea at this place called Wanderer's Tea House. And Wanderer's Tea House is this really nice tea house in East Lansing. It's on Grand River. It's a nice place where you can go and you can get an array of teas, and they serve it in a nice teapot. And because I have that British legacy of tea, British colonial legacy of tea, I really like that Wanderer's Tea House place. And we hooked up for that shit. And when we did, it was a very, very amazing experience. It was amazing because when we started talking, we found out that we were both so interested in Renaissance issues of the continent, and I was so fascinated by how much he genuinely knew about Africa and African history, heroes, and all of that nice revolutionary stuff. And he was, I don't know what he was fascinated by, but it was a really, really hot and inspiring and, great conversation. We had our tea and talking and everything. And I remember that at some point, I thought to myself, man, this guy just seems like the male version of me. And when I thought it, just after I thought it, he said, damn, you were like the female version of me. And boom, 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 stars, stars, stars. Anyway, he was a senior, I was a freshman, and what I knew about African American guys is that, damn, those men are difficult to hook up with. And I was in a place in my life where I had just broken up with a fairly long-term boyfriend who I had had through high school from Burundi. And I was just trying to enjoy singlehood. And then this comes along, and I wasn't really pursuing anything. I was just appreciative of, yeah, look at that. Some good brothers out there. And he was attractive to me physically, but most importantly was how, he was so intellectually stimulating. And I thought of it as a very intellectual date. That's what it was, And what happened? Basically, my point was just that a week later, yeah, we hooked up. It was just unexpected, because what happened is that like we spent a long time talking. Like we might have met up at like 3 and kept talking until 7, all that long. And then he walked me back to my dorm, and then we went and met. I happened to be going to meet some friends of mine. A friend of mine was teaching me Hausa, and he happened to be a mutual friend, Lawrence, and so we went together. And since we were all there, we never even did the Hausa learning. We just ordered pizza and ate and kept talking. So that night, basically, I had the first day night that I had spent with Lorenzo. We had been together from 3 p.m. till midnight, talking and laughing and, brewing some intellectual and some revolutionary magic together. And By the end of that night, it was still, we're just friends, whatever. It was nothing definite, but it was a bit suspicious on my behalf. Like, I thought, what's going on here? But anyway, I didn't take it seriously. And then, like 2 days after, there was a gig in my residence hall. It was an event by a club that Lorenzo was a part of. It's called the W.E.B. Du Bois, and he had invited me, and I did attend. After which, Lorenzo invited me and some of his friends to dinner, which we all went to. And then after dinner, I was supposed to go to the library, and he says, "Oh, let me come join you to the library." And I was like, "Oh, okay, fine." And yeah, he joined me at the library, and I'm like, what kind of friend is this trying to join me to the library for an all-nighter? Huh? And I'm like, maybe he's just a friend. But at that point, I was starting to be suspicious. And what actually made it happen was that one of the friends that we had had dinner with before this library shit went down, a girlfriend of ours called Cletisa, she and I went to the ladies together at some point, and she asked me questions like, "So what do you think about Lorenzo? Do you find him attractive?" And I just said, "Oh yeah, he is attractive." But I just told him that, "Oh yeah, I had just met him this random way, and we're just friends." But for Cletisa to say that Lorenzo was attractive to me meant girl is hunting this man, and so she kind of passed that message somehow to Lorenzo, and Lorenzo kind of got the message that I was already interested and ready for the kill, so it was time for him to make the kill. And this was just so ridiculous in retrospect. I did not know that Christista translated basic cheap girl talk in the restroom to something that gave Lorenzo the green light to pursue me. And I guess he did. And it was a bit awkward for a while because it wasn't so clear what was going on. But a week later, we were an item. And, we used to just spend our time, meeting up, frequently cooking, going to the library, or, spending a lot of time watching documentaries about, African revolutionaries and, heroes. And we used to spend a lot of time, just feeding each other's need for that connection with motherland and, healing from, those narratives that really devalued us because of who we were from the continent and because of the nature of our skins and so on and so forth. So that's about 4 years ago. And so Lorenzo graduated and he moved to Detroit and started working here. And I was still in college for quite a while. So he used to work here and come visit me on the weekends and so on and so forth. And when I had the baby in my third year, I don't know if I moved to Detroit with him after I had the baby. And we got a house that his parents owned that was just across the street from his parents. His parents had bought this house that was foreclosed. It was for this older lady who lived here. And we moved in and we have been working on it. And we've been farming on it as well and keeping chickens. Hence the recent news blast where this other white neighbor called the news on us for having chickens in the city because it's illegal. And we were just so upset because we've been having chickens for 2 years. And he has been trying to get us on something because he just is uncomfortable and just upset. I guess that our lawn, because we garden in our front yard and backyard, there's people who are difficult and they're very controlling and they want everything to look, traditional, classical lawn maintenance. I'm thinking that the baby's walking up over there. So basically, when I moved to Detroit, it was never really in my conscience about the violence and all of that stuff because You know, I come from Nairobi, and I didn't come from a particularly violent place, but you know, you have this awareness that, you know, anything can go down anywhere. So um, you don't really make a full judgment of a place. But so far, I take Detroit with all that it's got, and I have enjoyed most of it. There are some structural problems, mostly with infrastructure, and definitely, like, you know, the houses and everything. But I feel like more than anything, it's an exciting place to be, and it's so opportune because land and homes are cheap. They require work. I think it's a maker's paradise. And if anything, I would push for more and more people to come to Detroit and establish themselves and their ideas and their dreams right here. So that's part one of this series, and I'll join you for the next shortly. Thank you very much. This is Atieno Nyar Kasagam.